Yeah, so we have three main strategies. The first is to wrap up mom and pop operators into larger portfolios, perform the value add, potentially expand the size of the footprint to make them institutional in nature, and then to sell to someone that has a lower cost of capital, both on the equity and the debt side. We also have the ground up developments where we buy existing, land that has nothing on it, or maybe has something that needs to be torn down. And then we build large, 100,000 net rentable square foot facilities. And then the third strategy is kind of a hybrid strategy where we take big box retail stores that have gone dormant and then convert those into self-storage. When we buy a new asset, because of the 2017 Tax and Jobs Act, we're able to perform what's called a cost segregation study. That cost segregation study, it looks at all of the components inside of that building. It says, hey, this table is not going to last 39 years. These doors are not going to last 39 years. So then it'll actually segregate them into 5-year property, 7-year property, and 15-year property. And because of that 2017 Tax and Jobs Act, anything underneath a 20-year schedule can be taken all in the first year. Now, when that first came out, it was 100% bonus depreciation. In this year, 2025, we're at 40% bonus depreciation, but there is a bill that potentially is coming up in Congress that will reallocate everything up to that 100%.
100%.
So the reason I mention that is because when you have an existing asset, typically these were built 20, 30 years ago. They were not built with this cost segregation in mind. With the cost segregation, when you're building these assets, if you have the ability to build them from scratch because of the 2017, the knowledge of the 2017 Tax and Jobs Act, it allows you to build it in a way that pieces are replaceable or movable, and that increases the amount of pieces of that building that you can depreciate, right? So when you look at the, say, a ground up development, instead of me having all of the walls be fixed walls, I make all of those walls movable. I use specific materials that have a shorter lifespan from a tax perspective, not from an actual lifespan perspective, and that helps us. So you can see the difference of anywhere where you're looking at, say, an existing facility. In 2025, you can get anywhere between 30 to 40 cents back per dollar invested, versus, say, a facility that you're building from the ground up. You can reach into that, high 60s all the way up to 90% of every dollar invested can apply as bonus depreciation. So that's kind of the strategy there on the tax mitigation front. There's also ways on the exit to mitigate that tax hit. So not only, the 1031 everyone has heard of, you can just roll it into another investment vehicle that has good bonus depreciation. Now, that bonus depreciation, we call this kind of like your poor man's 1031. With that poor man's 1031, when you roll it in, you can offset, and then you don't have that timeline of 45 days for identification. Another 180 total to actually get that transaction through. And then there's also some types of transitions that you can do based on your buyer. So, for example, we sell to publicly traded REITs. When we sell to them, sometimes there's the option to do what's called a 721 exchange, which allows us to exchange our equity in the self-storage facilities into operator unit shares of the company, and that is a tax advantage exchange. So instead of you getting cashed out, let's say you have $1 million worth of capital gains that you have to pay on that transaction, you can say, hey, I would like a little bit of cash, so I'm going to take, let's say, 200,000 of that in cash, pay the tax on that, but the other 800,000 I'm going to leave in the stock market as these operator unit shares in that REIT. And then if you want to get cash against those shares, instead of selling them, what you can do is you can go to a wealth management company and they can actually lend against those, those prime shares. When we're talking about companies like Public Storage, Extra Space, U-Haul. So these are, they're not companies you've never heard of. These are large cap companies.